So what is continuous integration? Continuous integration is the process of automating the build and testing of code every time a team member commits changes to version control. CI encourages developers to share their code and unit test by merging their changes into the shared version control repository after every small task completion. Committing code triggers an automated build system to grab the latest code from the shared repository and to build, test, and validate the full master branch. So CI emerged as a best practice because software developers often used to work in isolation and then they need to integrate the changes with the rest of the team's code base. Waiting for days or weeks to integrate code creates many merged conflicts, hard to fix bugs, diverging code strategies, and duplicated efforts. So CI requires the development team's code to be merged to a shared version branch continuously to avoid problems. And then CI keeps the master branch clean. So teams can leverage modern version control systems such as Git to create short-lived feature branches to isolate their work. Then the developer submits a pull request when the feature is completed, and on approval of pull request, the changes are merged into the master branch. Then the developer can delete the previous feature branch. Then the development teams repeat the process for additional work, and the team can establish branch policies to ensure master branch meets desired quality criteria. And then team use build definitions to ensure that every commit to the master branch triggers the automated build and testing process. Implementing CI is the way to ensure bugs are caught earlier in the development cycle, which makes them less expensive to fix. Build, test, and release software in short cycles. And then it depends on automation at every stage so that cycles can be both quick and reliable. So here you deliver your software. So that's continuous delivery, and you're continuously delivering the software. What is continuous deployment? It is pretty similar to continuous delivery, but it is the process by which qualified changes in software code are deployed to production as soon as they are ready. So over here in the deployment, only qualified changes are moved to production. So what do I mean? Let's look at a diagram to clarify the difference between continuous delivery and continuous deployment. So over here, a developer commits the code to version control. It is automated and built, and then it's automatically deployed to staging, and then it's deployed to production. But this portion from version control to the build system and building is part of continuous integration. And then from there, the entire pipeline can be termed as continuous delivery or continuous deployment. But the difference between continuous delivery and continuous deployment is continuous delivery has a manual approval, whereas continuous deployment has automatic approval from staging to production. So that's where continuous deployment and continuous delivery are different. Well, overall, it serves the same purpose, moving the code from version control to production, as you can see over here. But the key difference in continuous delivery is the manual approval step, and the deployment is the automatic deployment all the way to production. So that's the key difference between continuous delivery and continuous deployment. In blue-green deployments, usually you have an existing environment. So let's say we call it as blue environment. Then when you want to deploy your code, you create a new environment. So in cloud, it's just easy. You spin up few instances, or if you are using ECS, you spin up your ECS cluster, or if you're using Beanstalk, create a new Beanstalk, or whatever you're using for deploying your application or for hosting your application, you spin up a completely new environment. And with cloud, it's really easy these days. So now you have two environments. The blue environment contains your current code, and the green environment contains your new code. Then all you do is switch your DNS. So all the traffic will now be routed to the new environment instead of the old environment or the current environment with the new code. And why do we do that? So let's say, for example, if you do a new deployment in the using the new environment. And if something goes wrong, if users are getting errors and things like that, you don't have to worry too much. You can just redirect the traffic back to the blue environment by just changing your DNS entry, and then troubleshoot the green environment. So you don't have to do that in a live environment. So that's where blue-green deployments are really useful. Like in few years back, there was no concept of blue-green. So people or everybody used to deploy their code in the live environment, and if something goes wrong, then you have to troubleshoot the application on the live environment, and then users are not able to log in if there are errors during deployment and things like that, and then it creates a lot of stressful situation for the business and for the developers as well. So with blue-green deployment, that is pretty much resolved by creating a new environment for your new code and then just switching the traffic through DNS, and then reverting, and if you want to revert your application back, all you need to do is just switch the DNS entry. Typically in AWS you have Route 53 where you do that. And one more thing, so when you want to deploy a new code, you create a green environment, and before you make it live, you can test your green environment, run your test cases, and or run your live testing on the green environment. And once you are satisfied, then only you switch your traffic to the green environment. And once you switch your traffic to the new environment by changing the DNS entry, and once you are fully confident that the green environment is functional and there are no issues, you can delete the blue environment to save cost, and you don't want like multiple environments running. So you can delete the blue environment once you are done and you're confident that your green environment is working. Beanstalk. What is AWS Elastic Beanstalk? Think about AWS Elastic Beanstalk as a wizard where you provide an input where you say, I want 5 EC2 instances, I want a load balancer, I want an auto-scaling group. And you just provide the inputs, and AWS creates the infrastructure for you, and you upload the code to your infrastructure. So that's what Elastic Beanstalk is about. It's a really simple and easy to use service, and it features in good number of questions in the certification exam. It also helps you do A/B deployments, rolling deployments, and other things. So in this section, we're going to see the fundamentals of AWS Elastic Beanstalks, like how to create a Beanstalk, how to upload your code to Beanstalk. Then we're going to see how to do A/B deployments for Elastic Beanstalk. Then we'll also see how to do rolling deployments for your Beanstalk. Then we'll see how to use Elastic Beanstalk from the CLI. And then we'll see how to customize your Beanstalk. So we're going to use EB extensions for it, and we're going to cover that in detail. But if you have your Beanstalk created through the AWS console or through the CLI, but if you want to have additional customizations, then you can do that as well using EB extensions and CloudFormation. And then we're going to see worker environments in Elastic Beanstalk. So if you want to do some heavy lifting, then you don't have to have your EC2 or the server do all the heavy lifting. You can offload the heavy lifting like image processing or sending emails or things like that to a worker environment. And we'll see how to set up a worker environment in Elastic Beanstalk as well. So Elastic Beanstalk is a very easy to use service, and you'll enjoy using Elastic Beanstalk. I recommend you try out each and everything discussed in these videos so that it will help you also understand the concepts, and it will help you in your exam as well. Food delivery company, and your application team has written an application. Now it's time to deploy it to production in cloud, but you want to do it really quickly and you didn't really plan it in the beginning. So now how are you going to do that? So there comes Elastic Beanstalk to the rescue. So I'm going to go to my AWS console and go to Elastic Beanstalk. Now I'm signed in as a root account. You could sign in as an admin or a user who has complete access to Elastic Beanstalk. So keep in mind about the access. So now I'm on the Elastic Beanstalk introduction page, and if you have used or you have not used this earlier on this account, you'll get this page. So I'm going to click on Get Started, and we are going to give our application name, and it's going to be Food Delivery, if I can spell it correctly, and choose a platform. So let's say it's a Node.js application. So you can select different platforms over here, whichever your application code depends on. So it could be a Tomcat application, a Node.js, a PHP application, and the other options that are available. Then you can upload your code over here. It's using a zip file or a WAR file if it's a Java application, and then choose the file from over here. But what we are going to do is just select on the sample application for now, and then click on Create Application. There's also configure more options, which we are going to look into another video. But let's just create an application now. So as you can see over here, for every application we'll have an environment, like think of it as your QA environment, production environment, dev environment, test environment. So it just created an environment for us. So there's an application inside that there are environment. Then the environment has an ID. So now you can see the logs over here, what Elastic Beanstalk is doing. So it's creating your EC2 instances, and then it's going to create security groups for your EC2 instances, and then it will create your Elastic IP and other things like that. And we're going to look into details of how to modify that depending on what resources you want to get created. So if you are using Elastic Beanstalk for the first time, it's important to just go through these logs, what is getting created, to have a good idea. And it will take some time for Beanstalk to create your resources for you. Also, one thing you'll notice is over here, Elastic Beanstalk will use a S3 bucket to store its environment data files. So it will create a new bucket if it's not there. So in my case, there may already have been a bucket with this name. So it will put the code that you uploaded, it will be uploaded to this bucket for reference purposes. And you can see over here that it has created an instance for us, and it's saying that the environment has been launched successfully. So let me go back to the food delivery application, and you can see our environment is up and running. It's green. So whenever it's green, it means we are good to go. Our Beanstalk has been created, the health is okay. So now how do I access my application? So if you go over here, there's a URL. So when I click on that, you can view our application to the URL that is provided. So one thing we need to go and see is we go to our EC2 section, go to running instances, and you can see over here that Beanstalk created an instance for us, deployed our code, and it assigned the security groups that were needed. If it should have port 80 open for the outside world because the application is listening on port 80. So this is how to create a Beanstalk. And so let's go to the environment. And you can see the events over here, what happened when environment got created. And it will launch, or it will log all the events over here. So if you want to clone this environment, it's a very important operation if you are doing Elastic Beanstalk operations. You go to Actions and clone an environment. So now I can say food delivery QA. So let's say this is the QA environment, and this will be the URL of your QA environment, and you can do a check availability to see if this URL is available or not. It's just like a DNS, so you need to check the availability. So it will be fooddelivery-qa.useast1.elasticbeanstalk.com, and then you can have your description, platform, and the service role. So it's important to use admin account or an account that has Elastic Beanstalk privileges to create this demo or for using this demo. So I'm going to click on clone. So now this QA will be the clone of the previous one, the one over here, the food delivery environment. So you can clone your environment. So you can see over here, it's gray right now. So it's under process. And then you'll see it will go to green. So there are different states of Elastic Beanstalk. So green is okay. Then there is amber, which is a warning sign, which doesn't necessarily mean that your application is down, but there could be something wrong with your application. And then if you see red, it means degraded status. It means you really need to look into your application and see what's going on. So while our environment is being created, we'll go here to the existing environment and look at logs for the previous environment. So if you want to retrieve your application logs, you don't have to SSH onto the instance. You can just go to request log, and then if you select full logs, it will fetch the logs over here for you. It will also show you the instance ID, and then you can just download the logs and then view the logs. Or what you could do is just request logs and go to last 100 lines and then click on download. So it will show the last 100 lines from each log. So if there is an issue with your application, then you can download full logs, or you can just view the last 100 lines of each log files, different log files. So that's how you can view the logs. You don't have to again SSH onto the instance, and you can just view the logs from the console. So now we have our environment created. So let's go to the environment. And you can see the events over here, what happened when environment got created. And it will launch, or it will log all the events over here. So if you want to clone this environment, it's a very important operation if you are doing Elastic Beanstalk operations. You go to Actions and clone an environment. So now I can say food delivery QA. So let's say this is the QA environment, and this will be the URL of your QA environment, and you can do a check availability to see if this URL is available or not. It's just like a DNS, so you need to check the availability. So it will be food delivery-qa.useast1.elasticbeanstalk.com, and then you can have your description, platform, and the service role. So it's important to use admin account or an account that has Elastic Beanstalk privileges to create this demo or for using this demo. So I'm going to click on clone. So now this QA will be the clone of the previous one, the one over here, the food delivery environment. So you can clone your environment. So you can see over here, it's gray right now. So it's under process. And then you'll see it will go to green. So there are different states of Elastic Beanstalk. So green is okay. Then there is amber, which is a warning sign, which doesn't necessarily mean that your application is down, but there could be something wrong with your application. And then if you see red, it means degraded status. It means you really need to look into your application and see what's going on. So while our environment is being created, we'll go here to the existing environment and look at logs for the previous environment. So if you want to retrieve your application logs, you don't have to SSH onto the instance. You can just go to request log, and then if you select full logs, it will fetch the logs over here for you. It will also show you the instance ID, and then you can just download the logs and then view the logs. Or what you could do is just request logs and go to last 100 lines and then click on download. So it will show the last 100 lines from each log. So if there is an issue with your application, then you can download full logs, or you can just view the last 100 lines of each log files, different log files. So that's how you can view the logs. You don't have to again SSH onto the instance, and you can just view the logs from the console or download it directly. So we are still waiting for the clone to get ready. So now our clone is ready, and if you go to the URL, you'll see that it's the exact replica of our previous version. So in that way, you can clone your environment deployments in Elastic Beanstalk. So what do we mean by blue-green deployments or AB deployments or red-black deployments? It means that, let's say we have this environment over here. Now I want to create a new environment with a new code. So what I'm going to do is I can upload my code directly to this environment, like I can deploy a new code over here. But instead of that, I'm going to create a new environment with new code. And essentially what I'm going to do is just swap the URLs, and the new environment will become the live one, and this one will become the old environment. And let's see how we're going to do that. And it will make sense when we actually do it. So what I'm going to do is go to S3. And there is this Elastic Beanstalk bucket. So it will have the source code for our application. So you see over here, we had 2 applications. So it has the source code for that. So I'm going to download that. So that's our source code that we upload to the Beanstalk. And then I'm going to open that zip file, and then we're going to modify the code and upload it back. So let's open the zip file and modify our code. So I'm inside that zip file. All I'm going to do is so I'm over here in the index.html file. I'm going to just write congratulations v2. So this is the version 2 of our application. So I'm going to go back and zip the folder. So I'm over here. So it's an archive.zip. So now what I'm going to do is go back to my Elastic Beanstalk applications. I'm going to create a new application or create a new environment, because we are going to create a new environment for swapping. Web server environment, we're going to select a web server environment, and we're going to look at worker environment in another video. So this is our web server environment. And then we are just going to name it as new version or prod 2. Let's assume the another one is prod 1, and give the domain name. And now the platform would be Node.js. Upload the code over here. So the zip file that we created, we are going to upload it over here. So I'm going to choose a file. So I've selected the archive.zip and the version label. So every time you upload a code, we have to select a version label so that later you can revert back your code as well with the version label. So we have the food delivery source. I'm going to just name it as v2. Click on upload. And now click on create environment. So now it's going to create an environment with our actual code that we have uploaded, and it's the prod 2. It is going to create a prod 2 environment. So now our prod 2 is ready. Now let's look at what we have, and you can see over here it has the v2, so it's a new version. So now for AB deployment, we have this original production and this is the new production. And let's say this is the live one, but now you want to make this as live one. So what I'm going to do is go to the current one, go to actions, And there is this option called swap environment URLs. So now what you are going to do is, this is the current environment and we want to swap it with the prod2, not with the QA, but with prod2. So we are going to swap prod1 and prod2 and then click on swap. So basically it will swap this URL. So the prod2's URL will be swapped with the previous prod's URL. So now you can see that the prod2 will have version v1 and the prod will have version v2. So if I go to this one and then go over here, it has v2 now. So basically we swapped the URL, so the user will be able to see the new version of the code. And now if something goes wrong in your deployment, or if you are not happy with what the user is seeing, you can again swap back your URL. You can go to actions and then swap environment URLs, and then again swap back your URLs. And I can go back, swap environment URLs, and then select so I can swap prod2 with the prod again if your deployment goes wrong, or after deploying you feel that you're not happy with the changes. So this is A/B deployment, where you don't directly deploy the code to the environment, you create a new environment. Like in this case, we created prod2 with the new version, and we just swapped the URLs. So the user that was going to prod1 will be going to the new version of the code. That's the difference. Let's say I want to terminate QA, like I want to delete all the resources that were created. So I'll go into the environment, go to actions, and then click on terminate environment. So this will terminate the environment, but it will ask you for the environment name again. If I can spell it correctly, and then click on terminate. So this will terminate everything it created, and it will terminate the environment. So let's go back to prod1, and you go to actions, you see different options over here. We already looked at swap, environment, URL, clone environment. There's this restart app servers. So in case if you want to restart your application servers, you can choose this, and Beanstalk will restart the application servers for you. The other option is rebuild environment. So if you rebuild environment, Beanstalk will recreate all the resources for your environment. So it will recreate the security groups, recreate the instances and things like that. So if you want to do that, first of all, clone your environment so you're safe in case the rebuild goes wrong. And so that's why it's important to clone the environment. So in case if the rebuild goes wrong, you can swap the URL with the cloned one. So you can just click the rebuild environment. So let's just rebuild. So it's now updating your environment, and you can view the events. So it's saying rebuild environment is starting, and then it will perform all the operations like recreating security groups and EC2 instances and whatever resources it had allocated. And you can see over here, this environment is being terminated, and so it's in degraded status. It's in red because it's failing a lot of health checks and things like that. So the environment state is severe. So that's where you can see the different environment statuses. And eventually it will be invisible once it's done, once it's deleted. And then we are already rebuilding this. So it's terminating the EC2 instance, and then it will spin up a new one. So that's how you rebuild an environment and you terminate the environment. And then those are the different things you can do from the drop down, the actions and the Beanstalk options. Into the environment again. So I'm selecting a healthy environment, and you can see over here different sections like configuration. And over here you can configure different options for your Beanstalk. Like if you go to modify, and you can change the instance type over here. Like I want T2 micro, then it will change it to T2 micro. And then the monitoring, like how frequently do you want to monitor your instance. And if you go with 5 minutes, it will be the basic monitoring of Cloudwatch. And we are going to look at these in details in the Cloudwatch section regarding what are the monitoring intervals for Cloudwatch. And then there are different options available, like with security group. So we did modify the T2 micro. So I'm going to just click on apply. So now it's asking us or warning us that it's going to change T1 micro to T2 micro. And I'm just going to click on confirm. So now it will again rebuild our environment, change the instance type from T1 micro to T2 micro in case you want to upgrade your instance. But again, it's always safe to clone the environment and then make the changes instead of changing directly on your live environment. So this is terminated from the previous video. It will stay there for probably an hour in this gray status. And this is still rebuilding. And you can see the health is pending, and you can see click on the causes over here, and it will show you if there is an issue with your instance. It will show you the details over here. So the logs we already saw how to get the logs. So let me go to the healthy environment, the logs, health. It will show you the instance health. So status is okay, and it will also show you if you have like 5 instances. It will show you the health of each instance, and if one of the instances is failing a health, it will show it over here. And you can select the instance, and there are instance actions, like you want to reboot the instance from here or terminate the instance. You could do that. And then monitoring. So here is an important part. Like you can have a whole dashboard of your entire Beanstalks. So if you have like 5 instances in your Beanstalk, you can view the average CPU utilization for your entire Beanstalk over here, or the network in, network out, or the actual health. Like it's okay, but sometimes your environment may go to degraded status, so it will show over here. And you can also create an alarm. So if you click on this bell icon, then you can create an alarm and add an alarm. So if you want to get a notification if your CPU utilization is greater than 50, and then you can select an SNS topic over here and add an alarm. Also, you can get notification when the state of the alarm changes. And we're going to look into details in Cloudwatch, like what an alarm is and how to add an alarm. But if you really want to add it right now, you can go ahead and do it. So you can create alarms, you can view the overall health of your Beanstalk, and it will your CPU utilization is the CPU utilization of your entire Beanstalk. If your Beanstalk has multiple EC2 instances, in our case we just have 1 right now. The alarms, we haven't created any alarms, so it will show all alarms or only the alarms that are in alarm status. Then you have this manage update. So if you can you go to configuration tab, and in the manage updates you can modify, and then you can enable manage updates. And if you want to upgrade your software automatically, like if there are patches available, if you're using Tomcat and there are patches available for the version, or if there is a minor version update available, you can click on apply, and what it will do is on Sundays every week it will apply the updates if the updates are available. Also, if you replace the instance, so it will updates on a new instance and replace the instance. So you can do it on a Sunday, or depending on your schedule, it will apply the updates. And the events section is very important. Like you can view the events on what's going on. So if there are some issues, you can view the events. And then if you want to tag your Beanstalk, you can also do that. So these are the operations you can perform on the Beanstalk, and you don't need to know in details, but let's create a new environment. Select web server. I'm going to just name it as test. So if you select like some domain name which is popular, and if you click on check availability, it will say it's unavailable, because it's end of the day this is a DNS URL. So somebody may have taken it. So we'll have to name it uniquely. So it's available. I'm going to choose an existing version. So you can choose remember the tagging we had done? So you could choose a existing version. So I want my V2 version. Future, there might be V3, V4, you can select that. And also you may have hundreds of versions. So you can go back to V2 anytime you want by selecting the version over here and create a beanstalk from V2 environment. So now let's click on configure more options. First we need to select a platform. So ours is Node.js. So now I'm going to click on configure more options. So it's going to take us over here. And it says low cost free tier eligible. Our configuration right now is low cost, but I want to make it highly available. So because I want to have a load balancer and an application and an auto scaling group. So default load balancer type has been changed from classic load balancer to application load balancer. So if you go to load balancers and click on modify over here, it will show you which load balancer do you want to select. So over here, I'm going to select application load balancer. You can select classic or network depending on your application requirement. So we're going to select application load balancer. And then there are all the rules that are available with that. And then I'm going to click on save. So with that, we can click on create environment. So now our application, this new one, will have a load balancer. Earlier we just had an instance. Now the instance will be behind a load balancer and an application load balancer. So it will take a few minutes, and we'll also see how to add more instances to our environment. So you can see over here it's creating our auto scaling launch configuration. It is creating the target group for the load balancer, for the application load balancer. It has created the security group. So after a while, everything will be created and we'll have an environment with load balancer and auto scaling group. So now our environment is created. It has a load balancer and auto scaling group. So we had selected version V2, remember, from the source versioning. So now it's available. And if you go to our console, go to EC2, and if you go to load balancers, and you can see over here, it's already created for us. We didn't have to create it. So everything was done for us. If you go to auto scaling group, there is already an auto scaling group for us. One of them was created for us. So this is how you add a load balancer to your Beanstalk environment. So while we are over here, we'll go here, go to configuration. So we'll go to capacity, modify, and over here it says single instance. But what we are going to do is, for our previous environment, it was only single instance, right? So we are just going to make it load balanced. And the minimum the max is 4, minimum is 1. I can change the minimum to 2. So now it will add an additional instance for our previous environment. So it will also add auto scaling. And then you can choose your auto scaling type, like how do you want to scale your environment. So I can say that if my CPU utilization, average CPU utilization for 5 minutes is greater than 50%, then increment my EC2 instance by 1. So that's like auto scaling your environment, and we are going to look at auto scaling in detail. So for right now, we are just going to choose load balanced and increment the minimum instances to 2. So it will add one more instance to our environment. I'm going to choose an apply. So it's saying that it's going to change the single instance to a load balance 1. I'm going to click confirm. And that's what it's going to do. So this is how for our previous environment that we had created, it was not load balance and it just had one instance. So if you want to upgrade it to multiple instances, let's say you expect a lot of load during certain times, so you can go in and increment your number of instances. So that's how you can increment your number of instances. You're not going to give this URL to a user, right? Like you need to have a recognizable domain name like www.myfooddeliveryservice.com or things like that. So what we are going to do is I'm going to go to Route 53, and I already have a domain purchased, and you can purchase the domain from here. So it's around like $12 a year, and I've already purchased a domain. It will create a hosted zone for you. So I have this public hosted zone, and over here I'm going to click on create record set for my domain name. So I'm going to click create a record set. It will be www record set. Type would be cname, alias, and the target. The target here is where you select your beanstalk that you want this to be redirected to. So if anybody types in www.domainname.com, it will redirect to this URL. So that's how you redirect your request and give it a human readable domain name. So over here it takes a while for this record set or the targets to appear. So once they appear, you can just click on create, and then when you go to www.domainname.com, it will go to the beanstalk that you had selected. So after refreshing and going back again, you see now the list is populated. So I can select an environment target over here. I just want to make sure it's there. Yes, it's there. So I'm going to click on create. So now you see we have a record set. So for www.domainname.com, the alias is our beanstalk, our prod2. So if I go to www. It may take a while for it to propagate, and after a while you'll see if you go to this domain name and it's not HTTPS, it's just HTTP domainname.com, you will see the application. So this is how you can associate a Route 53 record set, or you can redirect your domain to your actual beanstalk.